Well, good evening, everybody.
Read that.
We're a little late. It's 6:32 p.m. Tonight is Tuesday, April 3rd, 2018. And if you would join us in the pledge, we'd appreciate it. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, roll call, Clerk Rattari.
Trustee Wiegand is absent and excused this evening. Trustee LaRue.
Here.
Trustee Everson.
Here.
Trustee Marks.
Present.
Treasurer Johnson.
Here.
Clerk Rattari is here, and Supervisor Durant.
Here.
Staff present is Manager Gerard, Roger Zappa, our Township Attorney, Kirk Page, Public Works Superintendent, Jason McCarthy, Township Planner, Zoning Administrator. Committee members present is Mike Springer from Planning, Recreation, and Roads.
Thanks. The gang's all here. Any public comment?
Mike Springer, Eagles Nest Road. I'd just like to reserve some time after Mr. McCarthy talks on 6A. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. And nobody else, it looks like, and we have no board member comment in relation to that. So next is the consent agenda, which tonight includes the approval of regular meeting and closed session minutes of March 20th, bills payable in the amount of $225,526.38. We have reports from the Area Wastewater Treatment Facility Advisory Board of February 15th, my supervisor's report. Correspondence not requiring board action tonight includes DEQ correspondence regarding Semco Marquette Connector Pipeline, and the Charter Communications are irregular on our agenda with their changes, the lineup change. And I don't believe, unless someone has any conflicts of interest, that there's anything to pull for that. That's it for the consent agenda. Do we have, we don't have a
Move to approve.
thing to approve, so we
Support.
can just do that. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
No budget amendments.
budget.
so it doesn't have-
Resolution, that's
It does
what I was
not have to be a roll call tonight.
All right. 6A is consider US 41 underpass funding update.
We need to approve the regular
Oh,
agenda first.
yeah, I'm sorry.
I know you're late,
Just
you want to get
I
through.
want to
but-
get into it.
I
Okay.
move to accept the regular agenda as amended minus the closed session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. So we can close that off. Cross that off. Now we can do 6A. Consider US 41 underpass funding update and naming rights request. And Jason McCarthy is here to give us an update. You do have some information in your packet. I apologize. The board was not, I thought we were all informed through an email of the shortfall. And apparently the board members saw this in the paper and had not been told. So that's something we're kind of trying to, we've worked on a little bit.
I got mine in the
You
email.
got something? Some board members did not.
Okay, my apologies. I thought that went out to all board members, but
Well, it actually did go out in the packets before it showed up in the newspaper, so it was in the board packets.
So we might have been emailing or something. I remember seeing an email for it, but I didn't pay attention who it went to.
it's a fluid situation. I mean, we got the information last week, disseminated it as we could. Obviously wanted to formalize a game plan moving forward. You received the packet information stating that we did not receive a rural development grant due to some stiff competition in the area. A little bit disappointing considering the project that we had, 100% match. Contribution from Eagle Mine, which actually funds quite a bit of that rural development grant. Furthermore, we were funded at $225,000 for the MNRTF grant, not the $300,000. And so that gives us a $75,000 shortfall there. There is a saving grace in that the TAP grant, the federal grant, did cover the match for the $225,000, so we do not have to come up with that match. And that's partly where some of the confusion laid. We did have a stakeholder meeting last week and came up with a great list of additional potential stakeholders and donors that we hope to move forward with. We'd have representation there from Representative Combenzi's office, NTN, RAMBA, a couple of our committee members, and it was a good 1 hour crash session on who else can we tap to help us along with this project. Along with that, the idea of potentially having naming rights on either one or both of the entrances of the tunnel on the header came up. I did contact Grants Management to ensure that that was a viable option, and they confirmed that it was. I guess they used to have issues with it before, but they don't anymore, and they assured us that we can go ahead and solicit that. I wanted to ask the board for your approval on that before making any additional phone calls or, I guess, angling that way with fundraising efforts. But staff feels confident. We had a $500,000 match, and we have $400,000, okay? We need $100,000 between now and October. And as I've stated before, there are a lot of other people working behind the scenes on this, not just myself and Isaac and the rec committee. There are multiple agencies. I did receive a phone call today. Hopeful that the county is going to be able to contribute. They have a recreation fund that they generate from timber harvest that they have on their own property. And so I know that that was going to be brought up at the board meeting tonight there. So there's lots of opportunities still out there. In fact, some of them were fairly surprising that I didn't even consider, of course, looking at it from my angle. So I just wanted to give you guys an update, let you know that we're going to go full steam ahead and asking for that ability to provide or solicit naming rights on one or two of the tunnel entrances.
Okay, John?
Could you provide the board with the list of the number and the names and of the stakeholders eventually? Great. The other comment I'd like to make is I've looked at this request and struggled with it because I personally think that there's something wrong with, first of all, the pass out that was made and came with the packets indicated that the pictures, these pictures here, that what you were looking for is people who were going to be business owners or companies, and neither of the two examples given were a business or an organizational name. You might check that out sometime. So the examples that were presented to the board for our consideration were not organizational names or business names. The other point I'd like to make, and I understand that there are mixed feelings about this whole thing, but I think we've kind of lost our way. Our township planner, and who I respect, but I think our township planner's request that for a fee, a business or organizational name be allowed placed on each planned underpass entrance is kind of an unabashed attempt to add the township board to what I think many taxpayers will ultimately properly view as an unacceptable act. That's just my opinion, I understand that. But I wanted to express that because I think that we're opening a door here. It's a slippery slope, and I can't support it. And so I'm adverse to the proposed licensing of our staff members to sell township property. And I'll just stop at that.
Anybody else have any comments? Pete?
I look at it a little differently than that. If you go to hockey games, you see boards all the way around, and they all contribute X amount of dollars to have their name up there. You know, and this is not unusual for anything else. I mean, it's done all over the country. You know, what you do, you can contribute X amount of dollars, and we do it. And it might seem like you're selling it, John, but it's just another way of fundraising and stuff like that. But they're not changing anything about it. But just a way of raising money, you know, in a lot of cases. And I see where you're coming from. You think you're selling the property, but we're not. We're not selling anything of that project.
You're not only selling it, you're gonna maintain it and keep it spiffy.
Yeah.
That's what you're gonna do. And so and there's a big difference between a commercial building having a name of a bank or something on it. There's a big difference between that than a local community where taxpayers provide the money for upkeep and maintenance. And it's going to have a company name or organizational name on it. It's all in what you can accept. I'm not ready to do that. And that's,
I always look at it this way when somebody has something up there, and I just say, well, thank you. You know.
yeah, but that's
what it is.
you're at the hockey game.
No, I'm at
Yeah, you're
parks and stuff like that. You know.
If I may, the two examples that I provided were not signs that were created and ran into the header. These were well done and aesthetically pleasing, in my opinion. It had nothing to do with whether they were a corporation or an organization or not.
You just wanted us to see where it was going to go.
An,
so
an,
we knew-
an example of,
Yep.
right.
What it would look
A
like.
tasteful example of, if you may. Regardless of whether or not the board accepts the proposal to do that, I still think we're going to be successful. So you can say no, and I'll have my marching orders to move forward.
I beg your pardon, could you repeat that?
Yes, regardless of whether the board accepts the proposal to have a business or organization on the header of the tunnel, I still think we're going to be successful in raising the funds.
Jason, that's not what you're asking for. You're asking the board to condone staff doing this.
I've been doing it for 6 months.
I know. We're well aware of that.
Ernie?
I've looked at this and really didn't know which way to go, but maybe I've traveled too much and I've been to too many places and I've seen these names all over from corporations, companies and everything else on both public and private entities and that. And I would have to see what kind of name that would be put on there before I would approve it, but I think it's something that we can look at and make a decision in that. We're not really selling the township. We are supporting a activity, and whatever entity decides to support it financially, they are going to put their name, logo, whatever it is, at that point in time. And I think at that point in time that we have to decide if that's what we want on on it within the township and that. When I look at Little League ballparks, not only here in Marquette and the rest of them, that you will see advertisement from entities in that community who are supporting that field and that, because the governmental entity, whoever is overseeing it, needs the funds to do it. So it's not unusual to do something like this. It's just that before we do it, we have to make sure that we control what is put there and that, and how it's put there, and what effect it'll have on the township, so.
Randy?
Yeah, I guess that's the key to understanding basically what's being talked about. And where this isn't coming from staff or from township per se, it came from a meeting of the stakeholders that were here. It was a suggestion that they threw out on the table that Jason said he'd bring to the board. But basically what we're talking about is more than anything, a recognition of people participating in the funding of the project. Much like if you go to the YMCA, you see banners all around the gym of people who've made a contribution to the YMCA for its operation. They put those up for recognition. No different than the Lions Field. The Lions name at Lions Field. They contributed the field, so it's named in their honor as being a contributor. We've been, I'm going to say euphemistically because it hasn't been me, it's been the staff basically, but they've been working very hard to make this project come to fruition, and with a very large support of a number of groups and entities and individuals around not just the township but around the area that think that this is a good idea. We're pretty confident that we're still going to hit that 100,000 between now and October. In fact, we're taking a little different tack now. Jason and I talked this morning, and we're looking at some more. We were trying to do this locally, so it would be a local project and have local recognition, local ownership, those kinds of things. But we're broadening that out now between now and October to some of the national agencies and entities that fund these kinds of projects. We're disappointed. We were pretty confident that we were going to get the grant funding that we had applied for. The indications from the folks who steered us in that direction were pretty positive. It just happened that there was more competition than was expected for the dollars that were available. So we're still very far along in the process in terms of the funding. We've got between now and October, roughly 6 months basically to come up with another 100,000 from alternative sources that we're trying to do. That's just one of the ideas that came up. Was a kind of a branding, whether it was an annual recognition of contribution where the name might change annually, any number of things, could happen with that process. But we're a little bit under the gun because MDOT is drawing its plans, basically, and they need to know whether, relatively quickly, probably within the next couple of meetings, we're going to have to make a decision as to whether we're going to scrub the project or continue with it and return the funds that have already been committed to it. But they're going to need to know before they do their final plans whether we're building the tunnel or not. So so there's a little bit of impetus here to move forward. It's not really underfunded; just some of the funding didn't come through that we were anticipating. So now we're trying to replace that with other sources.
Go ahead, Randy.
Yeah, I look at it from like a taxpayer's point of view. I don't think we're selling anything out if I talk to any taxpayer and say, if we offer to, put a group's name on there for helping and it's not going to cost you anything, I don't think they're going to have a problem with that, for taxpayers, because we try to keep this from taxpayer dollars from going into this. And, to me, this shouldn't be a big issue, in my opinion. That's my opinion. I just think that if we can raise some dollars doing this and keep it from coming from the taxpayers, because we are committed now to do this. I think we should take any revenue source to fund this that we can, because we are committed to do this. And if a group's going to give us money to and we've done it at Lions Field too, so it's not like we have not done this.
Schwemmwood Park.
In Schwemmwood Park, so it's not really a big thing in my opinion.
Pete, follow-up?
Following on what John's thinking, John, would you say that the mile markers would fall under the same categories you're thinking, about the sign over the top of the tunnel. That if you sell, you don't sell it, you donate, people donate money and you put it for a mile marker and you have their name. So right along the trail like they do for the races or the runs or something like that. Would you consider that the same way? Mile markers?
No, I wouldn't.
Dan, did you have any comments?
I'm not opposed to this at all. I agree. I think it's, if we can generate the money, we've got to do everything we can to do it. I can see where John's coming from, but I don't agree that it's selling the township. We've said for a long time that we don't want any money to come out of the taxpayers' pockets to fund this. And I know we're committed now, and there's no backing out, but we got to come up with that $102,000 from somewhere because we don't have it.
Well, we're $1,200 closer this week already, so. But thank you for your comments. And I agree too. It wasn't, it wasn't my favorite idea, this naming or a branding, in my own opinion. But in the opinion of the project and being successful, it's not a bad idea.
I thought that grant was a slam dunk. I thought it was.
Believe me, we all did. Very disappointing, and we weren't the only ones that were disappointed. There were state legislators that were disappointed, that were kind of working behind the scenes too. All those projects were supposed to be, well, Marquette County was supposed to be favored in that grant process. And of the 10 or 11 that were awarded, 2 of them were in Marquette County, I believe. So it just goes to show anything with life. Some things you think are certain and they don't happen, and then other things that you don't think are going to be certain, like a $2.5 million federal grant, that comes through. So that's life, and you pick yourself up and you keep going. And my goal is to not let the taxpayers down or the people that are interested in the project down, to get the thing done and put it to bed so we can work on something else.
Go ahead.
I think a couple of things as we move forward, and from listening to the board, it sounds like it's something that the board would concur with. I would think of 2 things, is that before anything is put up there, that whoever does this, it comes to the board, so we have to take a look at it, make sure what we think is worthwhile putting up there and doesn't downplay the township at all. The other side is a time period, 3 to 5 years, and it has to be renewed. It isn't for potential, so it's a time frame on it. So if they want their name up there, or someone wants to do something, it's for a time period. And then you come back and say, either you do it or we'll get someone else to do it too. So it's one way to generate some funds for maybe maintenance of it too, so.
Well, I give you credit, Jason, for being slapped upside the head and not getting the money that we all thought was going to be the slam dunk, and you're trying to figure out how to fulfill the obligations that we put on you. You're spending a lot of time and effort doing this, and you're volunteers, so I give you kudos for that, because you're up against a brick wall right now, and that's not a good place to be. It's not easy. When I first heard that we were going to expand a little bit and think about this idea, I was kind of on the fence too. I don't know that I necessarily agree with it. I'd have to think about Ernie's proposal. I'm not sure.
On the sunset
Yeah,
of the time period, yeah, that'd be
yeah.
tough.
But that's what this is about. When my staff comes to me, I want them to think outside the box when they have an issue. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to figure out different ways that are going to work based on different demographics of what's out there. Randy had his idea you guys had talked about. That might come to fruition. That might take care of all of it. So unless you just don't, if you're just going to sit in a box and not try to figure out how to solve a problem, it's our decision. You're expected to bring as many possibilities to us as possible. I know many times during budget discussions over the years, Randy said, okay, well, I have to give you the other side of the picture. You know, this could happen if you do this, or if you spend this money, you know. And I've had board members say, why would you tell us that? You know, well, that's your job, is to give us as many alternatives as you can. It's up to us to make the decision. So thank you for bringing some different alternative. But are you looking for direction tonight to say, yes, pursue this, or?
Just consensus would be fine,
Something?
yeah. Just, it'll change the letters that go out and a little bit of the presentation, probably, just to be able to have the flexibility of offering that. We still haven't talked to some of the larger entities.
That's what I was just gonna say. Do you need, you know, like a dollar amount? Would it be easier if we said, if somebody wants to contribute the whole amount, we would really consider it? Or is it, you know, is it gonna be like a raffle, or what were you thinking?
No, I guess I'd appreciate the liberty to
See what's out
discuss
there?
that with the individual donors.
Okay,
But I completely agree with Ernie's comments regarding a design and something that is aesthetically pleasing to us to be put up on a structure like that.
You know, as a, for instance, the library and the Forrest Roberts Theater, they've got levels, platinum, gold, silver, and basically they have posted at their facility the donors that fit in those categories, and it might even want to consider doing something like that. $1,000 contributions of gold, and you know, you list the names of the folks
yeah, it wouldn't just have to be in
that
the
did that.
header.
Wouldn't have to
Could
be
be
necessarily just one. It could be, you know, it could be kind of a recognition plaque for those that stepped up and made major contributions to make the project happen.
Well, then we might have to consider those who have made substantial contributions already.
Yes, and that'll be.
Got some 10,000s and,
I'm sorry. Yes, you know, we vow, as we have at Lions Field and Schwemmwood, having those signs that denote everybody's contribution. Those who have logos and are part of a business or organization, those logos will be proudly displayed, as well as the individual donors and even ones that are anonymous. There's been several of those. Yeah, I don't claim to be a professional fundraiser. I've never put that on or on my resume or anything. But I will say that the relationships that have been born out of this process are golden and hopefully will be long-lasting. And that includes local and state agencies, as well as all of our, you know, the trail advocates around the community. To meet and put faces with the names that I've heard has been a great experience. And, you know, the networking that is involved with this is, it's further than you think it is.
so would it be fair to say that we have consensus to have Jason continue pursuing this? Pete?
I wouldn't be in favor of every 3 years, like Ernie suggested. That just don't fit this particular project, I don't think. I would want to make sure that they keep it up and that, and the sign, you know, maintain it and stuff like that, make sure I'd be more concerned about that than putting a 3-year limit on it and change it to someone else for 3 years. As a rule, they usually don't do that, so I wouldn't be in favor of that. So,
John?
We've already made a formal motion to make a commitment to maintain this once it's there. We've done that. That's a board action that's already taken place. So whatever you do, whatever sign you put up, or whatever signs, multiple signs you put up, they're going to have to be maintained. That's one of the things I continually remind this board. Whatever grants you get, once you put them in place, you put you've made the development. Once you make that commitment to maintain it, that's going to be in your budget for now forward. So there's no question in my mind that, let's say the board tonight gives the authority for the staff to go ahead on this particular project And that staff, I assume, means Jason and, again, Jason and the manager running around. Whatever gets put up there eventually will have to be maintained. There's just no question about that. And it's going to have to be in the budget each year. So you don't have to worry about that part of it. It's going to be maintained, even at the expense of many other things that we might like in the budget. Things like the generator we've been asking for 5 years.
We can talk about that during budget discussions again, too. Anything? Yes.
I think, talking about maintaining, that can be part of the discussion if we go this way, right at the beginning, that if this becomes reality, it's a responsibility of whoever does it and that.
It depends on the circumstances
Yeah.
and how big and how much, I suppose. But the question he's asking is can he pursue this avenue? And that's what we want to know, whether it's an emotion or consensus.
I think we should follow it.
I
Proceed with
don't
it.
have a problem going there.
No problems.
At this point, I feel the same.
Just keep us up to date as to the status of it, that's all.
I agree.
Thank you.
What type of, do you have any design other than the pictures of?
No.
What it would be made out of? Is it stone? Is it?
I think it, I
We're
think
not
it'll.
that far yet.
Even, if it even happens, okay?
But I'm thinking, I guess, a little bit out of the box, because whatever you make it out of, and I agree with John on maintenance, but there's, depending on what it's made out of, there may not be maintenance on something like that either.
As exampled by the,
Yeah.
the
I mean, that's
pictures that
that's a
I
one-time deal, so,
A header.
etched in stone.
yeah.
Okay.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Good. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? We're good with Jason? Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
He wants
Thanks.
to speak
Yep,
after that.
yep. I was giving Jason a chance to finish up. Okay, Mike.
Mike Springer, Eagles Nest Road. I want to thank this board, first of all, for listening to the people that came in that supported this underpass. I also want to thank you for looking at your citizen survey and seeing that a vast number of people want more trails and pedestrian access. I also want to thank you for erring on the side of safety, that if you save one life with this underpass, that you've done a miraculous thing. I also want to thank you for continuing to support the staff and the people that are working behind this, because they're putting a lot of time into this, a lot of energy, and I believe that they're going to make it happen. I just hope that you will keep that vision, that you will realize that this underpass is something that if this doesn't happen, we should all be ashamed of ourselves, because this is a key asset to our community. It's going to save lives, and it's going to interconnect trails. We're already known as a trail town, and I hope you will continue your support of that. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, next up is 6B, consider draft letter to Marquette County Township Association regarding Marquette County Solid Waste Management Authority. The last meeting, we discussed me putting a letter together to the Township Association, the county township. While they have no authority over what happens with the Solid Waste Management Authority, my thought was to kind of use them as a conduit. And next, maybe if this doesn't go anywhere, maybe we tackle the county and see what their participation might be willing to be. My letter gives the history a little bit to the association. I did have a conversation with a Marquette resident today who asked me whether he knew it was going to be on tonight's agenda. I didn't ask him why, but he pretty much said, what's going to happen with this? He didn't say, what are you going to do? But he said, what's going to happen? So somehow, maybe he watched the last show, or the last meeting. So people are concerned about it. I have another lady who contacted me that's just fit to be tied mad, that she agreed with some of the things we said last time about the truth not coming out, about how they've been talking about recycling for all these years and haven't been with the glass. So this is my attempt, and I'm totally open to suggestions or scrapping it or adding a line or two or whatever to try to facilitate this. Now, I am going to meet with the director, Brad Austin. I think it's next week. I have to look at my calendar. It's either this Thursday or maybe next. And Darlene Walsh from Sands Township. And we're going to take a tour of the facility and ask him some questions just about what's going on. I told him at the last meeting that I'd been sick for the last 8 weeks, and I feel like I'm kind of out of the loop on what's happening. Darlene missed a few meetings because she was involved with the UP 200. So I asked him if we could just get together and catch up. And he said, about what? He was very guarded. And I said, I need to know, we're part of this. We have no say. Like even the Heritage Trail, we have a representative on that authority board. We have no say with this group. And this is, number 5 or 6 of some of the crazy things that have happened in the last 2 or 3 years. I want to know what's happening. So he said, okay, I'll check my schedule. So we did set this up. And in the meantime, I'd asked you about typing this letter up. So I'm looking for direction again. I'll keep pushing it, or I'll stop, whatever this board agrees to. I think we need to continue this. I'd like to see us change the makeup personally of that authority, how the board is set up, the legal side of it. I would like to see a lot of changes. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen because of this letter, but that's just my personal opinion, how I think things should be run. I just have trouble with this. So, John, you had your hand up?
I agree with what you're trying to do, and I appreciate that. I've read your letter, and I find no fault with it. I think that the letter is well crafted. It may have meaning. It certainly will be a historical benchmark where, if it's sent, and I think it should be, it'll indicate that we're laying down the gauntlet and saying, this is what we think should be happening. This is who we want to go and represent us and have conversation with you folks. And to the degree you can have impact, I wish you well. Most of us have been at one time or another to these meetings, and we are as disheartened as you are about the activity and the adaptability of this board that we have to deal with. We have no say. So this is a beginning, and I would urge the board to support your sending of this letter as is.
Okay. And the reason, if you remember, the reason I picked the county association is because they do represent all 19 townships. And, frequently, many of us are there at some of their meetings. I hadn't been lately, but.
That's a motion, John, I'll support it.
It is.
Okay, I'll support that.
Okay. Pete?
Linda, in your letter, you said about a tour of the thing. And I think that's good that you're going to take that, but, we have all 19 different agencies and identities.
Municipalities?
It'd be nice to set something up in the summertime. I'll bet most of those, again, never been out there.
Well, they're talking about this $2 to $3 million improvement they want to make. And I said, when were you going to bring that up? And he said, well, we're going to meet with each one of the townships individually. And I said, why would you do that? Why would you waste all that time and not just have one big, announce it, have a, whatever. It just, he said, well, you know, we were gonna get to you. I said, okay. I just don't like the way this is progressing. So that's why I chose the county association, because they represent all of us. We pay dues. We are a part of that group. Everybody, every one of the townships should be at that meeting every month, somebody. But, so that's why I chose them.
They're
Anything
probably
else?
tired of not having a say also. So why do they want to go if they can't have a say in anything? And something's got to change. I commend you for wanting to try and make change. It needs to be done, but you got a tough road ahead of you.
Baby steps, I guess. Anything else? We have a motion on the floor. And a request for roll call. I don't know if you want to wait for Pete or come back.
Going out to cough, I think.
Hey, I get that. I've been there. It's miserable. Yes. Huh, a typo. Well, this may be a solution. Okay, I can fix that, thanks.
The spirit is well-known.
Well, I think we could take a roll call. Pete?
Sure.
Trustee Marks?
Yes.
Clerk retires, yes. Trustee Everson?
Yes?
Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
And Supervisor Durant.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries 5-0 and 2 absent.
So you know the procedures better than I, or maybe Roger, if we want to include his vote or can't, or
No.
whatever.
He's left the room, so he's
Okay.
actually not voting on this.
Okay. All right, next. 6C is consider letter of support for the Republic Dam Repair and Operation Project.
If I may.
Yes, sir, you are up.
This is really not a consider. This is for your information. At your last meeting, you approved the letter. This is just a copy of the letter that went. So it really doesn't require any action on your part. It's just information for you at this point.
Go ahead, John.
I received this in my packet. I thought the letter was well-crafted, and we'll just let it go at that.
Okay. Anything else for him, Ernie?
I think the one thing I noticed, and I should have contacted you, I looked at it a couple times, is when you sent the copies just to the MEDC, did you send a copy to the Republic people?
Yes. They received a hard copy.
Okay.
Actually, they received it several times. They received it as a draft, then they got it when it was going in the packet, advising them in case they wanted to come to the meeting, and then after the board took action, I sent them another copy saying the board had approved it and a copy of the mailed document.
It just didn't indicate that, and I wanted to make sure
Yeah,
that they
that's
did
good.
get it.
Okay. 6D, discuss Public Works DWRF2 project. Randy had put a huge packet together for us in our mailboxes with some background information and maps and everything. He wanted you to see it, especially because he was going out of town, to have some time to think about it. We can go through it. If you have questions, Randy can kind of explain it. We can talk about it again at the next meeting, or you can do whatever you want. But just so you know, we're not necessarily looking for any answers right now. But go ahead, Randy, explain.
Yeah, there's been a tremendous amount of discussion over several years, over a number of years, about the viability or the advisability of the Phase 2 of the water project. So I just wanted to make sure that the board members have the full background. So we've given a copy of the original study that was done in 2003 and 2004, adopted by the board in 2004, that contained both Phase 1 and Phase 2. So the board adopted that and approved it in 2004, actually. It's been in the strategic plans ever since. It's been a document that has life ever since. Just recently, we had sent out the update to that plan that was done in 2013, and also a copy of the 25-year master plan. And what you didn't have, I don't believe, so far, was a copy of the actual water supply agreement that's in place right now with the city, which is attached to this. The settlement document that went along with that contract that established what the terms were for the discounted water and things such as that. And Guy did get in touch with and talk with, and so did Superintendent Page, with the engineers that worked on the project at the time, to ask them for their best guess at this point of what the impact has been of the marketplace since we last looked at this about 5-6 years ago. And they gave us a real ballpark rough estimate. They said, it could be as high as 30 to 40% higher. It could be the same as what it was then. They won't know until you actually do a bidding process. So what I tried to do with this was to give you a broad parameter, basically, of a best case and worst case scenario, what the impact of that would be on the residents, what the impact would be on the lands, the property, basically, that would be potentially opened up to development or further development if there were municipal water supplied, and what that might mean to Public Works in terms of water revenue, what that might mean in terms of the general fund, in terms of taxability and about tax return value, to give you a little better concept, a little better idea of what the benefit of the investment might be going forward. In terms of if it's going to cost you $4.8 million, as a for instance, if it's going to cost you $4.8 million to build, which is on the low end, it's going to cost the residents about another $10 in a debt retirement, or a combination of debt retirement and volume rate, however you wanted to set that up. But then you open up 647 acres of development land that could generate as many as 130 to 150 new home sites that will generate users for the water system and revenue, that will generate tax benefit and revenue to offset that investment. So it's the picture that I was trying to give to you is basically giving you the full view of what the pros and the cons are, with my intention being maybe that the board then takes this information and schedules a work session or two to work through what is it we want to do, what are the pros and cons, what are the benefits, what are the downside. As a for instance, if the board decides to do nothing, there's going to be an increase in cost to the residents. As of January 1st of 2026, your water rates are going to go up 59 cents a thousand gallons, which is going to cost you about $2.40 a month if you're a regular user. So that increase is on the horizon. That's going to happen. So is the benefit to have that cost increase and still be subservient to a water supplier, or is it more of a benefit to have a higher increase, maybe 3-4 times as much, but then own the water system? So, that's a decision politically that this body has to make as the governing body representing the best interests of the majority of the township residents. So that's what this packet was intended to do, is to give you that additional information in conjunction with everything else that we've had and the discussions we've had, to possibly go into a work session and make some decisions on either, yes, we're going to do something, or no, we're not. So we know where we're going and we can get the plan in place.
Randy?
Yeah, I agree with the manager. I did look at the material. I thought it was very well done with all the cost associated with the best guess. I think he kind of hit that right on. And I do agree that's probably a work session on the horizon somewhere down the road. And again, we have to make decisions, but we're not like at the pivotal point yet to do it. So we can take a little time, and I believe there also are some still other options with this that we can look at too. Like, like the manager said, if we do nothing, what are those costs going to be transcribed to the residents, and yearly, and just lay it all out. Like when we did the roads, I think we did it very well, where we said this is what we're going to do and this is what it's going to cost, and get like 3-4 options and tell the residents, this is what we have, this is in front of you, this is what, and then schedule along with work sessions, maybe some public meetings again, have them come in and see the 3-4 options, say, what do you guys want to do?
But before you get to that point, this body has to be in unison in terms of what you think is in the best interest, and and that's what you're in office to do, is present what you believe to be in the best interest of the majority of the residents going forward, whether it's a good idea in their opinion or not. I mean, ultimately, they'll decide that when they cast their next ballot. But that's where we're at. I mean, we're at a point of having to decide whether we keep kind of sliding back and forth on this, or whether we say, yes, we're going to do it, no, we're not going to do it, and then we know, and and go forward. So I think a work session is the way to do that, where we can sit around, even in the community room, if we sit around with big maps and whatever, and sit around the table and just throw all the things out on the table. What about this? What about that? What about that? And get the questions answered, and then make a decision.
Well, we pretty much decided that within the next year or two, we're going to have to start the process if we want to go forward.
Correct.
Because of the time frame.
There is a time lapse involved in it. That's
Not
correct.
only with the amount of money that we lose on the discount, but the process itself. A year to get permits, and a year to get this, and a year to do that. So,
We are a little bit ahead of the curve because we do have a plan already. We have a design and we have a plan, but what we have to do then, and it'll be decided in the bidding process, if you decide to go forward with it, the bidding process will decide the cost. Depends on what's happening at that particular time with tariffs and with, trade wars and with president and not president and, all kinds of things that impact the economy. I mean, it's back up again today. The market's back up again 350 points today. It was down 500 Friday. It's just up, down because of tweets. We need to ban tweeting is what we need to do. That's bouncing everything all over the place. But it basically the two items that you'll be dealing with in the bidding process, if you go forward, material costs, labor costs. That's the primary two issues, and they usually go in opposite directions. So it may be 4.85, it may be 5.5, it may be 6, it may be 8, depending on what the bids bring back and how much work there is out there.
well, just regular interest rates have gone up too.
Yes.
Are going up, go 3/4 to a whole percent on just regular loans. So we don't know how that's going to be affected by,
Well, what I tried to do here is I gave you the picture of if it comes in what it was last time, 4.85%. What if it comes in 30% higher? What if it comes in 40% higher? Gave you some numbers to take a look at and to equate in terms of what the possible returns might be. So that was the whole idea, was just to give you more information than you could possibly deal with at this meeting, and maybe set up a work session or two to work through it.
A lot of information in there.
thoughts, John?
I agree. I think that the manager has presented us with the latest information that now completes the picture. And we're in the best position that we've ever been to have a work session and have an open discussion about which way we think we might want to go. I'm sure that in that work session, there'll be more questions asked that will probably call for more to be done. But we're in the best position we've ever been on this kind of a project to make,
An informed decision.
yeah,
Yep.
we can make a decision.
And you also will, in that
And I think the work session is the answer, and it should be one that starts early, because I think we could be there late.
Yeah, and you're going to have to stir into that discussion political, economic, legislative issues as well. What are we looking at? I mean, the court just awarded Nestle, was it 540 million gallons a day to pull out of the aquifer downstate, and an additional 540 million gallons a day for bottled water. That impacts groundwater. That impacts a variety of things. So I mean, that's a legislative and a court-related type issue. So those things have to stir into this discussion as well. What do we think might be on the horizon, locally, regionally, statewide, nationally?
Yes, Ernie?
A work session probably is the best way to go, because this is one option that the board has. The board has to look at all possible options we have out there.
Mhm.
And as you look at them, it's a yes or no at that point in time.
Sure.
But it's just not just talking about the option, it's going through and really digging into that option, what's involved, and the justification for not going that way or going that way. So this is what we have to do, and that this is just one option that we have at this point in time. And that's-
But this was the biggest variable that we didn't really know. So now, I mean, this is what everybody's been asking for, is how much would it cost us? And it's still kind of a guesstimate, but this is the basis for a good discussion now. Do you want to just deal with it during the budget session when we set some of those meetings up, or did you want to talk about it ahead of time?
Well, what's the month? We don't,
Time frame.
let's see, we don't have much discussion in May, right? I think.
We've got the CIP we're going to talk about a little bit.
Well, that has a lot to do with the CIP, in my opinion.
Yeah, that would be fine. We have it on the
Probably will be
5-1.
the CIP.
Pardon?
I said it probably would be the CIP if you choose to go forward.
Yeah, for that whole year.
But I think May is a good window.
Well, it's on, the discussion is on the 5-1 agenda. We can change that, obviously. We could meet,
Well, I think it should be a work session
That's
in
what I
that
mean.
month.
That's what I
Yeah,
was
we'll
gonna say
schedule, we'll
was-
just schedule a work session in that month, and
we can either talk about it in the beginning and get some direction and then have the work session after, or we can move that discussion, because this is the agenda as we kind of have it set up. So we can move that to the 15th meeting discussion and meet those first couple weeks in May.
And also, May is a 5 Tuesday month, so we do have 3 weeks at the end of the month between meetings, so that might be a good time too to, or we'll have time in that
Use
month.
the third one, the third
Yeah.
meeting.
But I mean, we can schedule a work session for that month and I think then go forward, because the budget will be starting too at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll be, by end of May, we'll be heavily into the budget process. Staff will, not
Yeah.
necessarily the board, but staff will be heavily into the budget process, formulating the proposed budget that
Put your
you
numbers
want to
together.
get by early July. We'll have the final revenue numbers by the end of June.
If we're looking at 2019, if, let's say we were going to start this project, we would want to talk about it like early.
I would suggest that you probably would want to have your initial work session in April, sometime this month.
Or we can move that discussion that's scheduled. I mean, it's a fluid agenda. We can put it anywhere we want. Thoughts? Actually, let's see, my May is not the best. You want to try to do something the first part of May or the end of April?
End of April is your conference.
What I was looking for. Yeah, the
20
23rd.
Can we
28,
schedule something
29?
early May?
Yeah. 23rd.
Put it on the next agenda for scheduling a work session in early May. We can get some dates together.
What are you thinking?
Eight, 22, or 29 in April, in May. Them are Tuesdays.
No, I'm not gonna be available. That's why I kinda wanted to do this.
That's what I was
at a
thinking,
time.
April.
It seems like it's appropriate. Thursday, the 3rd, is National Prayer Day. We should work on the,
5-1.
It's gonna be a crowded month.
It's next Thursday I go to the solid waste. Do you wanna do something next week, that soon?
what?
You wanna do a work session next week?
No, I don't.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Might be gone the weekend of, I could do it,
You get, we have, when
We've got a work session on the 11th, don't we?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
we're picking work sessions, we have to do it far enough away if you want a full house.
We're on the 11th already.
unless we do it right at the 1st of May. We have,
Don't bother me.
okay, if we have a regular board meeting Tuesday, the 1st of May, do you want to do something the next week?
The 8th?
Yep, any of those days.
We can do that.
Well, the 9th, I'm hoping a lot of us are in AMAR training.
Well, Lynn, next,
The 8th is a Tuesday.
yeah,
Want to do that?
on the 17th meeting, we can all look and get our calendars together for that time, too.
But you're going to lose the week of the 20th through the 31st.
Yeah.
Of May?
Is that when you're going to be gone?
Yeah, I just didn't tell the board yet. That's why I was kind of trying to do this a little sooner.
That's why I was suggesting Tuesday, the 8th.
Yeah, is that all right for everybody? How does that work for your schedule?
And then what time?
Probably an afternoon, well, after 1 probably would be good.
After 1? It's fine with me. You want
1 o'clock on the
to,
8th?
like 2 to 4? Is 1 o'clock okay, or would you rather?
1's fine.
1 to 3?
Or 2 to 4 is fine, too. It doesn't matter. 2 to 4 is
2
probably
to
better.
4? Tuesday, May 8th?
Yeah. Is that a motion?
Yeah, I can do it. Somebody wants to second
Support.
it.
I'll support. We'll have a schedule work session for the DWRF 2 project, May 8th, from 2 to 4. I'll post that tomorrow.
All in favor?
All right?
Opposed? Thank you.
That work session is going to be just on this, what's been handed out here?
On the whole
Discussion.
thing, the whole
The project.
project.
Whole-
Pros, cons.
We got
Everything?
3 packets.
Well, that's my birthday that day, so bring presents, okay?
All right.
Because to
By
me,
all
we got a lot more to do before we even get to making a decision on.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the initial discussion might be, this is one option, we have the information. Then, we've talked about a water authority, we've talked about some kind of a coalition, we've talked about not doing anything, we've talked about just going on until, there's 4 or 5 options that we can pursue. So
Well,
if we
you
have
know,
that initial discussion.
Realistically, I think you need to narrow your discussion down to whether or not you're going to go forward with DWF2. The water authorities don't work. The major player backs out. The county is still trying to put one together. For 3 years, they've been trying to put one together and can't get people to come together. So, I don't think you're going to see a water authority. It's just not going to happen. We've been working almost for how long, Kirk, have we been talking water authority, been in negotiations, had contracts drawn out, and at the last minute, people back out? At least 10 years, possibly longer. So I don't think a water authority is going to make it. We already know that the neighboring communities will not join together in a joint water system. They've said no. They've got their own investments, they don't want to do it. I think the question is, do we continue with the relationship we have with the city of Marquette, or do we do our own water system? I think that's the discussion you need to have.
I think we have to look at all the possible options we have.
We have.
Not just this here one.
You've got all of those options in your hands already.
No, we don't.
You
We
do.
don't.
You've got the report that I gave you,
Yeah.
explored every one of the available options, and gave you an engineer's recommendation. You have that.
Well, let's save the discussion till the 8th, okay? Something might come up. If there's specific questions that you want to ask
Yes,
or
I'll
something
have
to
some.
consider.
My concern is that we're going to get back in the same cycle again of talking about all kinds of options that are not even feasible and waste a bunch of time and nothing will
Well, we need to have
happen.
everything on the table, just like we just did with Jason, come up with as many options as possible and then discount them. When I don't know
Go
what's
back and look at the materials that you've got, because the options are all there and they've all been explored. So you've got that information already. Just go back and review it. The
We've got-
2004 report and the 2013 report.
We've got 3
Rehash.
packets.
Yeah. The items to look at is the original 2004 report and the 2013 update. They explore every option available, apply costs to them, and tell you what the outcome was. It's already done. Going to the lake, water authority, joining with others, different alternatives, staying with the city, it's all in those packets.
Okay, we'll talk about it on the 8th. Okay?
Yes.
Because we did. All right, you'll post that?
I will post that
Thank
tomorrow.
you. Policy discussion, consideration, development, continued discussion of tunnel vision SAW grant proposal. Kurt's got lots more information for us. Knocking down lots of trees. I do understand this better, so I think between the two of us, Kirk and me, we can explain this to the crew. You want to start, Kirk, and I'll try to fill in?
Sure. So tonight I've attached a revised proposal for, from Tunnel Vision Pipeline Services to perform condition assessment of sanitary sewer mains and manholes by cleaning and televising. All the televising and documentation is completed within accordance with the NASSCO, and manhole assessment is also in compliance with the certification program. The work is SAW grant eligible, and it has a 10% local match. So the revision that's included tonight is based on a different quantity of pipe. It's actually based on the original quantity of pipe that I gave this contractor, I believe it was just last year. But what he did was he used the manhole total that we gave him and just made an assumption of the distance between manholes. So he was off by like 20,000 feet. So this represents basically everything's the same except the quantity of pipe. And he also made a different assumption about heavy cleaning. He's anticipating less heavy cleaning, which is basically an hourly cost. So that's $202,000. At your prior meeting, you asked for basically an update of the whole project, so I included that here. The SAW grant application was submitted in December of 2013, and that application included a township resolution which designated me as the authorized representative for purposes of the grant agreement, and a non-agency agreement is a contract between the township, the Michigan Finance Authority, and the MBEQ, and it listed various terms and conditions. So in that application from December of 2013, I included the list here of a data collector and software for $10,970, some GIS software and licenses for $12,600, and also a server license for $18,000, and then GIS training for $7,070, and then I also included some cartograph software integration and implementation for $10,000. And then I had, and this is from 2013, a condition assessment proposal from Tunnel Vision, and that was $90,740. And actually, Lynn had discovered a discrepancy in the total here, or the numbers, I should say. And that discrepancy is actually in the Tunnel Vision. That was actually closer to it was actually over $93,000. And then consultant work to include life cycle analysis and capital improvement plan development, $68,000, and then also a rate sufficiency study by Stouter Barsh and Associates, who actually has a different name now, but that was $4,500. So the total application project cost was $224,880. So then we didn't get the actual award of the grant until November 22nd, 2016. And that grant award amount was based on the original project cost that's submitted under the application. And the grant amount was 90% of that, which is $2,002 and $448. $202,448. So now we have, I've expended some cost, and I have anticipated spending some additional cost. So the new estimate is, I've already purchased a data collector for $53.26 and software. I've purchased software for $75.50, and actually there are some additional licenses I did not purchase yet. They're like $2,500, I believe. Training, which has not been accomplished yet. that's anticipated to cost $2260. They've already claimed the $10,000 in the cartograph software integration. And I've included the new proposal from Tunnel Vision, which is $202,195. And that's about, I believe, his prior proposal, which was presented at the last meeting, was like 259,000, something like that.
259,000, yeah.
I've contacted the consultants there. They've agreed to keep their original proposal the same. So that total is $299,831. So another question that was asked was, how much are we going to owe above and beyond the grant, and where's the money coming from? So using this current estimate, basically, the reimbursable grant is fixed at $202,392. So using the current estimate, we would have a balance that we would be liable for of $97,439. So then there are various places where the money would come from. Essentially, this is professional services remaining to be completed here and contractual. We've already budgeted, and the balance account is $20,977. We have a current contingency of $100,343. And we also have, and this is unbudgeted, but we're working on an agreement now to actually accomplish this, but Marquette Township had requested to purchase capacity from for the wastewater treatment plant. So our share of that purchase would be $56,000. So those are possible routes of covering the excess cost here. I've also discussed with the consultant and contractor other options that might be available. The first thing I actually asked about was the elimination of our interceptor and related manholes from this project. And the reason for that is, and that would be acceptable to the DEQ, but the reason I did that was we have actually televised in recent years, and we've actually had a major project where we replaced some main, and we have replaced some manholes and added manholes in Maine as a result of that. And we also have some other new interceptor areas that have been replaced by MDOT as a result of conflicts with some city roundabout projects. So anyway, that would result, right there, that would result in another cost reduction of $26,645, which would leave, under that estimate, under that scenario, $70,824. There are also some potential other avenues that we're going to continue to investigate. It's possible to actually televise samplings of areas. You know, some of the, like Trowbridge Park, for example, which is, it's over 20 years old, but it's not super old. So we can make some assumptions based on our experience and based on televising, not the whole thing, but perhaps, you know, a certain portion. So that's a potential, and we're going to keep looking at possibilities. But what I really need is the same thing I needed at the last meeting, which is an approval for the unit pricing that's proposed by Tunnel Vision.
So what Kirk means by that is, if you look at your two little proposals in your packet, unit pricing, 3,500, 99, or 98, 98, 95, that's the unit pricing that he's talking about. The quantities to the left are the distance. And that's some of what
gonna vary,
could
yeah.
change.
So we don't really know. We can just make estimates.
Mhm.
But this is not a project, it's not a construction project where you can say, we're gonna build 20,000 feet of water main, and that's it.
So if they are able to do some of that boring rather than actually having to get in there, those numbers could go down. So instead of 69,000 feet of cleaning, less than 3 passes, and the pipe inspection, it could be 60,000, which would drop the cost.
Right. And even our original estimate that we gave Tunnel Vision, we haven't done this data collection yet. We're at the very beginning of this process. So it was a process of basically going through maps, stacks of maps, totaling up distances of manholes or mains, totaling numbers of manholes, and then making changes based on how old is this section. And so it was basically a tedious, time-consuming manual task, which could have been wrong.
And this is part of the asset management that we're trying to get better defined too. So
Yeah, this
can all be
right, that's
put in.
basically the goal here. And, and we did get a grant from the state to actually accomplish this. So it's, the way grants work is, if you're given money by the state, even if you're loaned money, they really anticipate that you're actually going to accomplish what you agree to accomplish in a written contract. So, we have committed to do this. So the only question is, what's the final cost? But it will be an outstanding product. So, and maybe I was a little bit misleading last meeting when I was talking about how great the wastewater is going to be, and maybe the water wouldn't be so great. But in the end, they're both going to be great. I didn't get a grant for the water, but I'm not going to totally reinvent the wheel. So it's going to be based on the model that we're doing with the wastewater. So even though I won't have as much assistance, in the end, it's going to be a comparable product.
John, you had a question?
Actually, I have a comment too. This is a very complex issue project. It's also one that I think that we have to accomplish. We have to do it. It's been on our in our packets on 2 occasions now, and I think a close reading of it may not give everybody an understanding, a complete understanding of what the details of it all. But I do think that, without question, it's an issue that we can't put off. It needs to be addressed. And so I'd like to put it on the table for now. There'll be further discussion. But I would like to move that we support the Superintendent of Public Works recommendation to adopt the Tunnel Vision proposal of March 1, 2018.
I'll second that.
Motion and support. Anything else, John?
I think, well, only that this is, again, it's a very complex issue, very detailed, very engineering oriented, and I think grasping the whole complex issue is difficult. But I think that there's unquestionable enough information has been provided for us to act.
Anything?
I think it's very important, as John says, because for the future of the township, they'll understand what's there, what's not there. And Kurt said, you could take segments of the township, and if the soil is about the same and everything else is the same, you could assume that after you do one section, the next section is probably the same thing. We know how long the pipe's been down there, so I think you can have the leeway of deciding something like that would be a good thing. But for the future planning of the township, for infrastructure, you almost have to do it.
Well, and the question came up when we talked before during budgets about, in the project, and some of the things that David questioned about the age of the pipes. How long are they gonna last? How old are they? We know now, even from some of the freezing, that some of them are down only 4 feet instead of
Right.
8. So we've learned a lot already about the infrastructure. So this is gonna be, this is all the lines over 20 years old in the whole township. So this is gonna be very telling. It's gonna contribute a lot to the asset management side of it. Ernie?
I have a couple of questions. On the anticipated revenue from Chocolate Township, how sure are we going to get that they're going to move on that? Because that was a question at the time that they did it, it's a possibility.
Well, they're still, I mean, they've got engineers, they're doing the work. I mean, they're still saying they're actually gonna do it by, I believe, August. So,
Break ground?
complete the project. But, it is a pretty big project.
Yeah, they've
So
actually
it might
broken
not
ground.
necessarily be this year, but I mean, that's what their plan is.
Yeah, they've actually broken ground. Basically, it's contingent on the casino, basically. And the casino's going forward. They're drilling wells and building capacity. So.
Yeah, they've actually, one of the things they have done is, their first thing was actually, they were looking for a water source. And they could not find an adequate water source for their project on their site. So I believe they either purchased additional property or worked out some agreement so that they now have adequate water source. And of course, that's what's going to generate the sewage, and then Chocolate also, I think it's their intention that they're also going to try to hook up, people along the path of the sewer route, some of their existing citizens that, need the service as well. But the whole project itself is going to be paid for, including this $56,000 by the tribe, so.
That was my biggest concern, how sure that they're going to purchase that 1% and that.
I think they're committed to it. The question just is when,
Okay.
what the time frame is.
They can work out the water and sewer problem. That's the biggest issues they deal with right now.
Right.
And once that's taken care of, they'll just follow suit.
Yeah, Trustee Wiegand did ask that question in an email that I responded back to him saying that, it's a fair concern, but our expectation is that that sale will occur. We can't pinpoint when, because it will depend upon the development of the tribal casino, which they've had some setbacks, but their intention is to open. So, it'll eventually happen.
We have to go down 492, they have to go down M28. So,
I think the other question I have, you're talking about possibly additional trips if something doesn't happen, they can't complete it and they come back. What's the possibility of that happening and that they have to do? Because in your,
Are you talking about?
if you're required to complete, if additional trips are required to complete the following approval, you get additional mobilization charges.
Oh, yeah. Mobilization is typically at the beginning, so it's just a set fee just to get to the project. In this particular case, the reason I've been bringing it to the board is because this company's going to have a lot of work this year. And luckily, a lot of the work is right here in this area. But I wanted to be as close to the first on the list as I could. So,
But I think what Ernie's
So in other words-
asking is, what would cause there to be an interruption? If it's on their part, why would we be charged another
well,
mobilization
there's not.
fee?
That's what I'm
Yeah.
concerned
There's
about.
not.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm just concerned if something happens and they have to stop and come back, whose cost that's going to be.
Well, the way I would look at that is if they start next week and then we have 18 inches of snow, like we typically do sometimes in April, where they can't work and they pull out and go elsewhere, then there'd be a new mobilization. But if their schedule is such that they leave for another job, we should not be charged mobilization when they come back. So, I mean, that's how I would interpret
Not
that.
getting 18 inches of snow.
You never know, we have,
Enough
April
last
snowstorms.
weekend.
Right, and this is,
April snowstorms.
even though it's not a construction project, it is a typical project for us in that we're paying also a consultant
Right.
to do a lot of work related to asset management, but they're also basically in control of subcontractors as well, like Tunnel Vision.
The only additional comment that I would make is that both trustee Marks and Supervisor Durant are accurate. You know, we've had a lot of discussion about what the condition of the pipes in the ground are. You know, and based upon, you know, as trustee Roop stated, you know, based upon the soil types and things such as that, you can pretty much predict based on age what they look like, but you don't know what they look like inside, and that's the key. That's the key to the pipes. Basically, if you happen to stop into the new service center or the old city hall, they had the display there where they've actually got sections of pipe that look great from the outside, but on the inside they're about that big around. You know, and that's what the tunnel vision does. It gives you the opportunity. It's like a colonoscopy for your pipe system. You know, they tell you whether you got cancer in there or not.
It is.
You know,
That's
and
basically what it is.
realistically, and then you know whether or not you can fix it without digging it up. And that, I think that's an important factor. It's a lot less expensive than digging the pipes up to see how they are.
Really an unusual,
Analogy, yeah,
Analogy.
I would think so too.
Actually, it's exactly like a colonoscopy.
yeah. But
Minus the
different
drink?
size.
Right,
equipment.
yeah.
Just don't have
I
to
would
do it
hope
fast.
Throw some Jell-O down.
You don't have to drink that gallon.
Throw some
And
Jell-O.
dealing with the same materials. You know.
Yes.
I was just going to say that
Moving right along here.
I mentioned to Kirk today that if we ended up using the contingency, because we didn't get the anticipated revenue from Chalkley, we could take that money and put it back in his contingency when it did come. So that would help a little bit. I hate to mess with his
Right.
contingency, because in that department, you never know what's gonna happen.
Well, that's what it's for. I mean, this would be-
Right.
And luckily, we're coming out of winter season, so we didn't
Yeah.
have the serious freeze-ups, although we did have a couple, but it wasn't as serious as it could have been.
Well, in Chalkley, the previous board, a year or two ago, had mentioned that they were not going to pursue any kind of infrastructure stuff. They were just gonna have everybody keep with their wells and their septics. Well, this new board and the infusion of the tribe changed the complexion a little bit, and the supervisor did say, oh yeah, we're going to go forward on this and have anybody hook up that wants to. So the complexion can change in any community, as we know, pretty quickly. So this should happen.
Well, yeah,
We
if
should
somebody
get
else
this
is paying
revenue.
for it, certainly.
Right. All right.
Oh, great.
Did we even get any motions on that? We've been talking way too long.
We do have a motion and a second.
Okay, and I believe you called for a roll call, John? Didn't you? Okay. Or asked for one.
Trustee Marks?
Yes,
Trustee LaRue?
Yes.
Trustee Everson?
Yes?
Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
Clerk Rattari is yes, and Supervisor Durant.
Yes.
Motion carries. One absent.
Kirk? Oh, I got that in the wrong spot. Oh, goodness, I forgot to add the means. That's what I was gonna do. I should have done that in the front to the agenda. Or did you, let me see, did we do that? No, I did, she did not, okay. I don't know if you brought your meeting agendas, the policy governance. One of the things we were supposed to talk about in March was governing style. I suppose we could move that to next time. I'm sorry, I forgot to put that on the agenda. I thought had given it to Andra. Yeah, it's already 8 o'clock. Okay, we'll save that. And we didn't have any items from the consent agenda that were pulled. Dave's pretty much doing our committee updates, unless you have something, Pete?
What's
Can you
that?
fill us in on any committee updates?
Yes, on the road project that we've had. Now, we're coming into the first year of, or fourth year of the of the maintenance part. They were, like a Pacer study, they went out and they reevaluated the roads. And No, what they're gonna do, we got a copy of it, what's wrong, what it should be done. That'll be passed on to the planning commission, and the planning commission will go over it, and then they'll bring it back to the board.
Who was they? Did the
plan-
road committee? did
Road
this?
committee, Dave and Isaac went around, and they checked the projects that they had to do, and come up with a suggestion. They rated them. We've only had 2 6s, and the rest were 6 or 7 and above. And I have a copy of it. And that goes to the planning commission, and then planning commission looks at it, and then they bring it back to the board. And what we want to do is get that out, get some bids on it, and come back and get the project started like we promised we did. We would. That's what the millage was for maintenance for 15 years. So that's the first process. We got the list, it goes to the planning, and then from the planning, they'll come to the board, and then we'll probably go out and get bids on it and see how much it's gonna cost.
Even though the asset management plan isn't completed yet, this is part of the asset management plan to do that annual assessment of the roads. And they did go out and did a physical assessment of the roads, applied the PASER factors to them, and came up with with their recommendation on the segments that needed to have some attention to keep them at a 7 or an 8.
Yeah, Isaac did a good job, very nice job on it. I'll make copies of, when I get down to this, I'll make copies of of this right here. That's what it looks like. And then you'll all have a copy of it, knowing that it's going to the planning commission first and then coming back to us. So I'll make copies and put them all in your thing. I only got 2 copies right now. So,
Well, Pete,
yes,
will we know what roads?
yes.
Which roads and which segments?
Just a comment.
That's just down the road.
I think I've repeated over and over again how well I thought the road committee did
I only got 1.
project that was there.
That's what
But-
you received
But
on.
I just wanted to tell you that my own observation of what happened was there were 2, I'll let you explain it, but there are 2 ways that the roads were treated. They were either paved and formally, or they were kind of
Chip and
covered
seal.
with a treatment and then stones
Right.
added. Where that was done with stones is an area that needs to be looked at closely.
Yes.
Because when the first plows went through, most of those stones ended up on the side of the road.
Right.
And I can tell you that we might want to think that through in some subdivisions in the future, if you were ever to do that, because people who had lawns between the road and their property then had a number of stones.
Well, you have to take a look at the aggregate itself.
Yeah.
The size of the aggregate and how much time you got to start rolling around on it, and that's what they're gonna be looking at.
Yeah.
And like in Huron Woods up there, on the corner there, where Big John used to live, that area right there, I was up there several times with him, and he walked around, and that's where a lot of the aggregate were on the side of the road. And so that's what we don't want. But
And that's one of the things that the road committee had looked at, and we had had conversation about that early on, because, basically what you're talking about is fog sealing, is what they call it, basically. They put down an emulsion, they put the aggregate in it, and then they roll it, basically, to make a surface. But there's also a heavier version of that that we're looking at for the repairs. It's a heavier emulsion, the same size stones, but basically it encapsulates it more strongly. And we did have concerns about that with the plows, that and the rolled curbing.
I understand we learn as we go along, and that's, but I just thought that's one comment that I hear regularly.
that's good, because like Randy said, we did look at that, and before the snow even came, we came and looked at it, and then the plows could level them off a little bit, but still, it's not the answer. We have to take a look at what's gonna fit for our particular subdivisions.
Yeah, and we need it to remain there
Right,
as is, as long as possible.
right.
Thank you.
But I think they did a good job overall. And I would say almost all of the residents were very happy with it. you hear people talk about the city and stuff like that. Some lady was after me about, oh, the roads, and they thought I lived in the city. Well, how bad the roads, you just gotta do something about that. I think she got me mixed up from sitting here and in the city. I said, we don't have no problems with our roads. We live in a township. You consider moving to the township. So, you know, they are, you know, the roads are, they're having problems, but they're all looking at the same thing as what this township does. The county, you can't wait for the county. They're not gonna fix your problems. Chalkley is looking at it right now, the same thing as what we did, and Palmer did it before that, and Nagani's looking at it right now in the same way, because that's the only way we're gonna get our roads fixed in our lifetime.
And the state's looking at it. They want 175 million from the feds, your tax money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of people looked at it as far as legislators and saw how nice it worked for us. And Lynn mentioned a little earlier how we did it, and I think Randy did too. But we had public meetings, come in, people wanted to know how it's gonna go, and they come in, some people come in really irritated. But when they left, they understood, because how much is it gonna cost me? Then you go right to the books, show them exactly how much it's gonna cost, what we're gonna do, when we're gonna do it, and they're very happy when they left. You know, they're laughing and stuff like that. And even the same people that kinda against it, I always follow it up with it, and they're happy with it.
You know, it's unfortunate that the state doesn't take the same tack that we took. Instead of doing things like increasing registration fees and gas tax and all of that, trying to fix the roads, do what we did. Reward those communities that agree to pass a millage and match what the millage generates. And let them fix their own roads.
And I'm happy
A lot
to
less
say that
expensive for
we
the
don't say, just pass it and you can read it after.
Yeah, well,
We didn't do that.
it would be a lot less expensive for the
Exactly.
state if they did that, if they just simply took a position that said, local communities, if you want your roads fixed, pass a millage, and whatever that millage generates, the state will match. Fix your roads.
That is the answer.
Save a ton of money for taxpayers,
That's probably where the discussion came years ago about abolishing the road commission.
possibly.
Anything else, Pete?
No, that's what the extent of the meeting was.
Mike, have you got anything on the rec committee that you want to share? I'd like to know what our folks are doing.
It seems like the road committee, the rec committee, and the planning commission, we're all working on plans this year, so that's part of what the rec committee's working on. Just an announcement, our cleanup, we're still planning on having it on Saturday, the 26th. We have had an offer from Cedar Motor Lodge to be able to use their conference room. So, but the meeting for the rec committee is on April 17th, 2 weeks from tonight. And we will discuss that and make a decision at that time, but we're still going to have it on the 26th. We're still looking at ways to try to extend the skating season for the ice rink. We're looking into different options for that. And we also, the Iron Range Roll will occur again on National Trails Day. That'll be June the 2nd. It's a Saturday. Thanks to Mr. DeMars, he'll be setting up, or has set up a meeting for security and safety for that event. The Planning Commission, just real quick, we have a public hearing next Wednesday, the 11th, and that will be on short-term rentals. Most of our focus, again, is on the master plan, and there's a citizen survey that we're very close to putting the final touches on. As soon as we do that, it'll come to the board, so we get your comments and your input on the citizen survey. And then we hope to send that out and get the results from that to help us set our goals and objectives for the new master plan. Any questions in those committees?
Anything for Mike? Great, I'm glad you're here,
Thank you.
thanks. Okay, any public comment? Did you want to add anything else, Mike? That's good. All righty. Announcements. Anybody have any announcements? Anything to share? Down to the manager's report. Anything from, we got that a little bit
Yeah,
later.
I do have a printed report in your packet, relatively brief. Two items that I did want to reflect on, though. At your last meeting, the board asked that I communicate with the Board of Light and Power regarding the status of the noise study that was done. The data was gathered in December. The last time I spoke with them, they had not received the report as yet. The board asked that I forward a letter to the new director to determine what the current status of that was. So I do have a copy of the letter that I sent appended. And also, I have attached several emails back and forth that give you a picture. Basically, the answer that came back was that, in essence, that the BLP had received a report back, but it was stamped as confidential, and was not, the director was not what's the word I'm looking for? He wasn't, well, not forthcoming, but he was not aware of the releasability of it to a third party because it was stamped as confidential. So did indicate in the letter that if need be, it was a request under the Freedom of Information Act, which they didn't outright reject, but did not submit a response. So I did forward it to our attorney for review, and we are pending a response from the BLP.
We haven't actually made a request, though, FOIA request,
It
right?
was in the letter, yes. It was.
But we haven't gone through the
Yeah,
filling
the
out
letter,
the form.
well, the letter indicated that, that the letter itself was a request under Freedom of Information Act
Okay.
if necessary. That was one item. Second item is there's been some concern among board members with overtime with regard to call-outs and things such as that. So I did also append an email, a copy of the most recent report, and a email discussion back and forth between myself and Supervisor Durant regarding overtime. See, Superintendent Page had left, but we do have a meeting scheduled on the 17th. The negotiating team has a meeting scheduled on the 17th with the AFSCME bargaining unit to discuss that very item, as a matter of fact. So we are looking at some potential alternative scheduling arrangements that could result in reduction of some of the overtime. Most of those, if you look at the overtime report, most of those are either grinder pump alarms that need to be swapped out or alarms at the tanks. And anytime you have those kinds of page outs, they require, by OSHA, they require 2 people to be called out. So that's why we're getting doubled up overtime on some of these. I did follow up on one that was February 15th with Superintendent Page. There were some other issues that came up with that, but I'm still not satisfied that there needed to be that much call out for that project. It was wintertime, frozen. It was a frozen grinder pump. It had some electrical issues as well as some snow removal issues, but could have probably been done a little more efficiently. So we are looking into those kinds of situations. So I just want to bring it to the board's attention because it has been a subject of concern previously.
So that was 15 and a half hours just for that. I really question some of the tax roll preparation. And it isn't just the Public Works,
No,
because I've been
overtime in
objecting to
general.
the first Wednesday rubbish. There's no reason for overtime when
Well,
that shift could change to a
yeah,
different
the
time.
issue, that's certainly within the discretion of the board. And I did have the conversation with one of the board members, but, you know, the first Wednesday of the month was something that the board created. That is not it wasn't something that was in existence or whatever. It was a convenience item for residents because we were trying to control what was being dropped off at the old drop-off site. The hours were set by the board. The board can certainly change that, but you know, I will mention to you, the same as I did to the board that created it, and it was not this board, is that once you establish that kind of a benefit, It's very difficult to take it away. It's very difficult to change it, because what are the residents going to do with their refuse?
I'm not suggesting at
No,
all that we
I'm
change
just
it.
saying, but the problem is we have to staff it. That's the
Fine.
problem.
Staff it over here instead of over here, so there's no overtime.
Staff it where?
Different, have them come in later. So there's no point in having them come in at 7 o'clock and work till 7 at night. Have them come in at noon, or 11, or 12, or 1.
It's the same people that open these buildings and plow the snow in the morning. It's the same people, the same two people.
Well, then something has to give.
That's, you know, and that's the issue, and that is the conversation I had with the board member, is that every time the board adds new amenities or new services without adding staff, you stretch the staff to have to work overtime to accomplish the mission. You know, it's, yeah, they could come in at noon, but then who's here to open the buildings and plow the snow? They come in at 6:30 to do that. So the buildings can open at 8, the 3 buildings, Fire Hall, Public Works, here.
Then they go home, maybe. There's got to be a way around this somehow. And maybe the answer is hiring somebody else. I don't know that. But I think we need to have that
Yeah.
discussion. If hiring somebody else is going to cost more than the overtime, then yeah, that would probably warrant it. Because we made a shift change under the 2 previous supervisors ago to make some of the changes, and we saved a lot of overtime. We made a few hours. When I was first on the board, that was one of the things that Anamini changed, because we had terrible overtime. And
Well, that's when we went to a 10-hour, 4-day a week, but
Right,
that shorts us 2 days a week. We only have 2 people on because
That's
of the
why-
rotation.
That's why I came up with couple options to look at.
But the issue that you have to remember is whenever our people are doing anything that requires electricity or requires anything subsurface, we have to have at least one more person. We have to have at least 2. And if there is a subsurface, we have to have 3. You have to have one up while the others are down. Those are OSHA requirements. We have 4. You know,
Yep.
I mean, that's
That's
what we run
state
in,
law.
and that's what we run into, and that's where you're seeing the overtime. Now, the things like the assessment rolls and things like that, that's because we're doing something for the county. You know, and maybe we should be billing the county for some of that overtime, you know, preparing their documents. But when we're dealing with Public Works and with the building and grounds folks, when they're dealing with those issues, we are mandated to have a backup with them. So that's automatically 2 people. I have 2. That's all that I have on building and grounds, and we have 2 crews of 2 on Public Works, and then 2 water operators.
So I'm proposing we kind of talk about this during the budget and see if we want, because this is a budget issue.
Oh, it's,
Whether
yeah,
we want to
it's
add
both
staff
budget,
or,
it's both a budget and operation issue. I mean,
Right.
what is it that we're offering? When we added the pathways, they have to clean the pathways for the school kids. I mean, those are things that, you know, in the wintertime, 7 months of the year, that's their major function in the morning, is to open the buildings and get the pathways cleared and the parking lots plowed. They could go home in the middle of the day, but then what do they do when they have to come back at 6 o'clock till 10 o'clock to close up the ice rink in the field? It's kind of, that's where you get into the issues of, if I'm going to be breaking my day in half, I'm going to be compensated somehow for that.
I think it's something we need to talk
Yeah.
about during the budget session.
yeah.
Yep.
Pete?
How do they get called out for emergencies? All right, I'm just looking at the 15th, you know, it's 6 right out there. And we have 4 people called out for the same project, and we end up 12 and a half. He said something about, I asked Kurt about it, he said they send out a blast when they need another person, you know, and all 4 of them show up. And then we end up
No.
paying.
It's not how it works. Basically.
Well, that's what I'm saying, we have to.
Yeah,
how does
the
that
way a
work?
call-out works is, a resident or a business calls in and says, I have a problem. They call in here, you have a person who's on call, they're paid to be on call. That person gets that message. Depending on what that call is, they'll do an initial response, and if it's something like a grinder pump or something that needs to be pulled, then they call out another worker. They don't send out a blast, they call an individual.
Well, they called 4 people on the 15th.
Well, according to Kirk, that's because they ran into more than just a grinder pump. They ran into electric issues and they ran into snow removal. That's what his question was. And my question to him was, why would that take 4 people 3 hours to do? And he was supposed to be here to answer that question, so. That is when I came back and I saw that report come out that I hit him with that right away. Why are we spending 12 hours of overtime for 4 people on a grinder pump call out? So, yeah, it's a service. You know, what is it you want to provide to the residents, and what does it take to provide that, and what is the least expensive way to do it? If we add another staff, it's going to be more expensive because then you have to add benefits and, you know, holiday pay and vacation time and sick leave and all of that. Is there an optimum answer? There is. I don't know what it is because we have to catalog everything that it is we want to do. The basic question is, does the board want to continue to provide all of the services that we're currently providing, or is there a better way to do it? As a, for instance, the first Wednesday of the month collection. Does it make sense to do that, or does it make sense to work with our hauler, North Country Disposal, to have that be available 2 or 3 or 4 hours block every day? So somebody could go out at any time and drop it off using their staff. What would that cost us? Instead of having one of our staff there for 7, 8 hours. Basically just directing somebody on where they're going to dump something, you know, keeping it segregated.
Do we need
So
a,
those are options.
excuse me, do we need an ad in the paper to tell them that, even though we put it in our flyer all the time?
What do you mean?
If we put an ad in the paper for about the first Wednesday of the month, do we need that all the time?
I
don't
don't
know.
know the answer
I
to
don't know
that.
either. That's why I had to
I
ask
don't
the
know whether
question.
that was part of the board's original motion or whether it's required somehow. I don't know that. But I mean, there are options that could be talked about. As it sits right now, the way it is, it's the first Wednesday of the month from noon until, now it's 6 o'clock. Summertime, it's until 7 o'clock. So I've got somebody out there, one of the building and grounds caretakers is out there for that entire time. Could that be done differently? We could potentially roll it into our contract with North Country, and just, it's at North Country is where they drop it off.
Do we have a
Just
count how
supply.
many people are using that service?
They check, yeah, they check the IDs.
Okay, be kind of interesting.
You have to, in order to do that, you have to bring your utility bill with you to show you're a township resident paying for garbage.
I just wonder how many people are going out dumping in the wintertime. You know.
Oh, I think it's still fairly busy. Yeah.
Okay, who's first down there? Dan?
What about a part-time person for those specific areas, for the closing of the rink, for doing the disposal site, and you don't have to pay a part-timer all the benefits? What would something like that?
Good. Yeah, adding another staff member. Right now, the 2 full-time building and grounds caretakers take care of the ball fields and the ice rink and all of those kinds of things, the buildings and the grounds, all that. We have the 3/4 time position that covers the rentals, you know, the township hall rentals that are outside of normal working hours. It covers the close-up of the ice rink, for the most part. Now, remember, there was a time there where we didn't have that 3/4 time person. It was off on a medical. So our full-time people were doing it with overtime. So, you know, and you're seeing some of that now.
I've seen that for the last 3 months.
Yeah. So,
It's quite,
well, but what you've seen over the last 3 months is also special events that we've done. Hockey games and things such as that were on weekends or in evenings. So, you know, they had overtime as a result of that.
again, it would be a lot cheaper just to have a part-timer and
Could.
to do that type of thing.
Yeah,
We
it's
actually-
a budget issue.
Yeah, we actually talked about it last year, the year before. It would be ideal for maybe a retired person who just wanted something to do. for-
Flexible hours,
Come and go, and
yeah.
that would, you know, give somebody else a job and not cost us a ton of money.
Yep, that's a possibility. And, you know, and we talked about it the last budget, what the cost of that would be, and it wasn't approved.
Don?
I think that, I like the report, I like the way it was written, I like getting the information. I think the board uses the overtime report to identify things that are going on that they're not necessarily aware of. And you explain those well. But I think that for the board, if you want to use this report to be informed of those other activities, if you want to know what the clearer picture, the wider picture, then you have to add to that comp time. Comp time should be a piece of this, because it's a combination of overtime and comp time, which is really the same thing, because when they're on comp time, away from the normal business day, somebody else is filling in. If you want the complete picture, is what I'm saying, you need to have comp time added to this overtime report. That may not make sense at first, but think about it. The people that are getting comp time would normally get overtime if we didn't give them comp time. So I'm just asking the manager to give it some thought, so that the next time we get a report about overtime, that we get a greater spectrum of what else is going on, because it identifies the same issues.
Yeah, basically what you've got with comp time is you don't have more cost, you have less service. Because basically comp time isn't paid, it's time off. They take the time off when they can, so it's a service. Yeah, it's a service reduction.
It leads to things
Sure.
that we can think about.
Sure.
Like frequently I've asked Chairman Springer if he wouldn't consider holding some of the meetings during the work hour.
Sure.
It covers a good deal
Mhm.
of comp time.
It does.
And that's just like overtime. That's it.
We also talked a while back when we had some issues with one of the other overtime reports about getting more detail. Who puts this, how does this get
Lois,
put together?
this comes out of accounting.
Okay, so she'd have to get it from the time cards or whatever
That's
report
where
they
it comes
do.
from. It comes from payroll. She is the payroll person, so this comes right off the payroll records.
So she could just easily put a line underneath, make it smaller type or something so it would fit and just say, double call out because of snow issues, or it'd save a lot of the questions for the board with these extraneous things, These are exceptions where you got 15 hours and one address.
Well, and realistically, where that would be best served would be with your superintendent of public works making his report to the board, would be to discuss the overtime
Report
report and what generated it.
Okay. And we get this the first of the month for the previous month. We're only a
Correct.
month off.
Right.
Okay. She's done an awesome job of keeping us up to date on the other reports too that we had asked for the financials, or I kind of did. So they're a lot more timely, and I appreciate that.
Sure, that could be an item that you could add to the report from the superintendent of public works as
Okay.
an overtime report. What's causing the overtime and what he's doing to mitigate it.
Okay, because that'll be at the next meeting. Okay, we can have him report on that. Excellent. Yes, Randy?
Okay, my 2 cents now on the overtime.
That's what we're here for.
You fell asleep there.
Well, in my opinion, we shouldn't be talking about it in this setting. This isn't board business, because the city commission and every other commission I've dealt with, they've never talked about overtime at the meeting, never. So I can see if it was really extraneous, but I think we're down lower than we were last year. I think this board has no business talking about it in this setting. That's my opinion.
Okay. Pete, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, manager's report. What I'd like to see is have our manager come back with a plan to combine the Public Works and the grounds crew under one supervisor and in the same warehouse. And I'd be interested, since we're doing a lot of planning in that, and I think if, put a little insight on it, and how could we accomplish that goal? Now, when we talked about this warehouse, the old fire hall, we thought we'd have everybody under one. But it didn't always come out that way. But it'd be nice to just try to get everyone together under one supervisor and in the same warehouse. And I'd just like to see if the manager could come up with some kind of a plan for that.
I don't know that we could if Public Works is, their financial structure is different than the general fund.
That's not for us to figure out.
No, I don't think we can.
That's why I'm
what
asking
saying.
Randy
Yeah, you
to come up
Would I
with
be
something.
wrong?
Can't commingle general fund and enterprise fund. They
Yeah,
would
you
have to
couldn't.
fall under the enterprise fund, which means that those costs would go against the utility rates.
Yeah. Yeah, if you try to add something to the Public Works Department, being an enterprise account, I don't know, is that right or wrong?
Well, I'd like to see him come back with something, and at least get everybody under one warehouse. You know, because was our object of the whole thing before, is to get them into one warehouse, clean up the trucks and stuff like that, and a maintenance program of some sort. But I'd just like to see what his ideas are on that, so.
Okay.
We can do it, we can't do it, but there's no, what's the difference between a grinder and cutting the grass or something like that, That's what I have to kind of get through my head, so. It's a service that we're providing.
Maybe you can explain it to Randy and he can come
Sure.
up with something. Pete, I mean, sorry, I was
Other
looking
Pete.
at Pete, John.
I guess I just want to say, I agree with our clerk that we're on the cusp of getting into something that we don't want to get into, we shouldn't get into. That's what we learned with much of our extra learning that we went on away from here. And we brought in help to tell us that what our job was and what it wasn't. And I think the clerk's point is this may not be.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else? I disagree. This is a budget policy decision. If we want to change how our structure works, tonight might not be the time to mention it, but I would say in budget discussions, if we want to change how the structure of our operation works, if we're going to put different things into place, if we're going to add another shift or something, we need to have that discussion. That'd be direction for the manager. So I don't think that that's totally out of line, but tonight's setting may be. But I think during budget discussions that should be part of it.
I agree wholeheartedly, Lynn. It's not appropriate for tonight, it's appropriate for the budget setting. Because what happens is we get lost. We get lost in our way because this is a budgeted item and we create policy for the manager to do that. And we're talking about it tonight. We have no business, in my opinion, talking about it tonight. It should go to the manager in the budget session, and then we'll take care of it there. I mean, we've talked about it for the last 15 minutes, where I think we could have done something else.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Okay, anything else for the manager? Any questions? Review motions and past assignments, if any.
Okay, we had a few motions tonight. Our first motion was the consent agenda. Second motion was the approval of the regular agenda as amended. We removed the closed session. Third motion was to approve the letter that the supervisor drafted to the Marquette County Township Association regarding the Solid Waste Authority. The fourth motion was to approve or to schedule a work session for the DWR2 project on May 8th, 2 to 4. Fifth motion was to approve the SAW grant proposal. And that is it for motions. And as far as I know, we do not have any action items for the manager.
Okay, then board member comments next.
I have a few.
Sure.
Two residents stopped me at Walmart. That seems like when they kind of get hit one way or another. One of them was talking about the road behind, what, Goodwill and Starbucks?
Yeah, it's a mess.
Well, I don't have to go any further then.
Right.
Now, we're gonna be talking with the road commission about getting a load of regrind to put on there. The last warm up, freeze up, warm up, and then that little bit of rain caused some pretty significant gullies in there that need to be filled.
They said, we almost lost our car.
I almost lost my truck. That's how I found out about it. I dropped a bunch of materials off. We had a flood at the house, so we donated a lot of stuff to Goodwill, and I went out the back way, and it was like, holy cow. How do I
Wrong
get
way.
through here with my truck even? You know, so,
The other one, the question was brought up about the public works vehicles. They indicated that originally we were discussing that they should be washing them once in a while so they look decent and that, and they said, I've seen too many that went through where they're just not what this individual concerned that should be representing the township.
they do have a wash bay at the garage, so they should be running, especially this time of the year when the roads are messy, they should be washing those off at night, in the evening.
So we should pass that on maybe to the superintendent of public works.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I attended the town hall meeting for Casperson last night. I just made a few notes as to what he talked about. He talked about a land management plan that they're working on, or he's working on that, and if it passes, the PELT payments will be automatic. You will be paid. And I kind of laughed. I'm waiting to see that happen.
Yeah.
And that too, so.
We haven't been paid for them before.
Sounds good.
I wish it was. We could use the money in that, too. Then he talked about Act 51. The representatives down in southeastern Michigan and one individual got up in the actual session where the Senate is, and indicated that we, in the northern tiers, are taking all their money.
Breaks my heart.
So he said we have to be very concerned and watch what's happening down there in Act 51. There's too many of them thinking want to change it so they can push more of the money downstate and that, not up here.
Vertical bridges in particular.
Okay. A little bit on the car insurance, on the 13% increase in that. Everyone there, he recommended that they contact their representatives immediately as to their concern with that and have something done. Because right now, there's no control by the state, and that it's just done. And
We are the highest in the nation.
that was brought up in that. He talked about the corrections facility, the prisons and that. Concerns that they're closing down the prisons, but the judges are not sending them to the prisons, they're sending them to the counties, and the counties are having problems housing them and that. An example up in the Copper Country where a two-bed place, they have 4 people, a 4-bed place, they have 6 or 8 people in it. So it's becoming a major concern in that. He didn't say what they're going to do about it or anything, not at all. Highway 95, there was discussion on that, and it sounded like, from the discussion, it's going to end up in the Supreme Court.
595, you mean?
595. Because they said that going through the local courts, they're losing it, so this firm from California is behind it, and they think it's worthwhile, so they're probably going to the Supreme Court with that, get that taken care of and that. So, and then the question came up, who's going to pay for the roads? And no one said a word. They had no idea where it was going to come from and that, so.
Jim's already admitted they're overloaded and they can't afford to keep up what they have, and now they're trying to support that.
I'm just repeating what was
I
brought
know,
up in
yeah,
that.
I know.
The other one I brought up about the dark stores and revenue sharing. Dark stores, he says, well, the Supreme Court did this and they passed it down. I said, I know it all, but the question is, why hasn't something been done downstate at the legislature? And I got no answer there. On revenue sharing, I brought up about us not receiving it, townships with 7,800 people or less not getting anything. No comment at all. So, that was it.
Sell out.
Thanks for that update. I wanted to go to that, too.
That's all
Anything
I have.
else? Any
That's all I
other
have.
board member comment? Pete?
It's for the board members, mark down your calendar, the Marquette County Township Association Spring Banquet is May 9th. We received a brochure on it before, but I just like to bring it up because it's a good time to meet the other township representatives at this dinner. And also, the hockey's done with for sure. Our next event committee, little project we have is a car show, and that's going to be Saturday, June 16th in our Marquette Mall parking lot up there. So that'll be our next event for the events committee.
Pete, are you gonna announce who won the hockey game last night?
The hockey game. No, that's Easter egg hunt. I didn't win. Who had, the hockey game, the last hockey game?
The last big hockey
The
game.
boot hockey.
The boot hockey.
Boot hockey?
It was not very well attended.
But who won?
Who did win? I don't know. I was picking up the
The
stuff.
community events committee won.
Oh, yeah, we always win. No, we always win, but it's fun to do that. But with the weather up and down, it just,
Well, it was a combination of things. You had the hockey tournament going on, the Old Timers hockey tournament going on in Calumet. You had the craft, the local craft brew event going on at Lakeview Arena. The weather was nice. It was sunny. Turned out warm, but it's one of those things. It was too late. It was just too late in the year for boot hockey. I think what the Recreation Committee is thinking about for next year, rather than boot hockey, is when we get to the point of not having ice, is to have a roller hockey tournament using rollerblades. That would pull some of the skaters out, but not while we're competing with a major hockey tournament in Calumet and beer at Lakeview Arena.
And I just had one person call me up and talk to him about our zoning thing behind Mickey's there, junk cars and stuff like that. And I suggested that he come to the planning commission, and he did come to the planning commission and stated his case. And I think we have to take a look at that. And I hope Jason and the rest of the planning commission take a good look at that, because I don't think we're handling that one. That was, it's taking too long to solve that problem, so. And it's something that shouldn't happen, so.
Well, yeah, the issue there, and Jason is working on it, but that is a commercial lot that he has next to a residential lot. So it's the last lot in the commercial district. So, so Jason is looking at it in terms of seeing what zoning there is and what compliance requirements we might be able to implement.
Because it was just taking too long.
Yeah, he
Take
did
care of
agree
that.
in the beginning, I thought. to
We've been dealing
take
with
care
that
of
over a year, and, we have to find out why it progressed so far and so long, so.
Well, you basically got a residential lot that's in the middle of commercial lots that has commercial, on one side is Mickey and on the other side is Fry Chevrolet, and, he's wedged in between, and it's not a good situation. I mean, it's one of those anomalies that you have when you got rapidly growing, because there was, as you'll recall, there was several residential lots there that got purchased and went through the planning commission to be rezoned as commercial, that were added to the Fry property. They owned it, they owned them. So those houses were removed. It leaves one residential lot wedged between two large commercial lots. So, it's an unfortunate situation, but I don't know that you can penalize either of the commercial lots because of it.
Well, there's language in the zoning, in the planning and that zoning thing that we should have followed a little bit better. And also, the planning commission asked that we get a legal opinion on it. So I don't know how far that's gonna go. I mean, we have to get that done. Because it's in a general business area, and there's things you could do and you can't do. Pardon me?
But
First learned about it yesterday.
Oh,
but I
okay.
have met with Jason to
Okay.
explain
Yeah,
what
it's in
the
process.
It's in process, so that's, leave it
opinion
at
prior to
work.
the next planning commission meeting, hopefully.
Okay, good.
which is on the 11th.
But I'm glad the guy came out and spoke, you know, I mean, rather than start telling him what I would do or he should do, or we try to stay away, we just sort of guide them to where they should go first, so that's what we did. I did.
That's great. And we hope that they do that, too.
Yes.
We hope that they follow up.
Well, you want to make them feel comfortable to come up, you know, but we don't want to set the stage against them when they do come up. you know.
It's all about information. Anything else anybody wants to share? Okay, we don't have the closed session then. We just need one more.
To adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. 8:59.
8:49. 8:49.